eBay friends. You have landed on episode number 143 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is December 13th, 2023, and my guest is Will in Michigan. No announcements this week, so we will go straight into the chat with Will.
Welcome back, listeners. I have Will with us today, and he actually reached out to me, a brave soul that wanted to be on the podcast to talk about some things that he sold and what he's doing, because I have seen your sales and they are quite unique and unusual items.
Yes.
So let's start off with where you're located.
So I'm located in the village of Ortonville, and that's about 40 miles northwest of Detroit or 20 miles southeast of.
Oh, another Michigander.
Yes, it sounds like you have a lot of those on the show.
Yeah, that's great. So
Yes.
we should have like a competition between the states, like which state is going to have the most guests on this podcast.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think Texas is way up there. And then just, maybe Florida.
I hear a lot of Florida too.
But that's great because, maybe you might find a kindred eBay spirit in your area that you can connect with and that kind of thing. Because I do see comments on the Facebook group when I post it there, like, oh, yay, another person in my state.
Right.
Okay. So now we know where you are. How did you get started with eBay, and what was the catalyst that brought you there?
Sure. So I've had an eBay buyer's account since probably the mid or early 2000s. But as far as selling goes, I didn't attempt to sell anything on eBay until a couple of years ago. And I would just sell kind of random things I'd find at thrift stores and things like that. And it was very small time. And to be honest, I didn't take it serious enough. And I kind of damaged my account to where, the feedback wasn't great. So then this year, I kind of just started fresh. I opened a new account about 7 or 8 months ago, and I decided to treat it as like a business, So I'm putting forth my best effort as far as like packaging, shipping on time, communication, all that stuff, trying to maintain my 100% feedback there. And this time it's gone pretty well. The hard part is sourcing the items at a price that I can make a profit. That's the struggle, I think. But this go around has gone pretty well. And like I said, it's been about 7 months or so with this new account. And I have over 100 sales now currently.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons you reached out. You're like, I'm kind of new, but it's really rolling along well. And, some people decline coming on this podcast because they feel like they haven't been doing it long enough or their sales aren't that great. But it's really more about just the lifestyle and how we're drawn to this. We have that reselling in our DNA. And so we're kind of like a unique tribe, and we just need to stick together and support each other, because as many people as are out there doing this, it's really not all that understood by the average person on the street. And you're in these groups on Facebook, there's thousands and thousands of members, but in reality, we're kind of a rare breed. It's just there's not a lot of us, or maybe we just don't know. We're just walking around, sleepwalking through life and passing other resellers, and we just don't know it.
Right.
But it is good to have a fresh perspective from a newer seller, because there have been guests on this podcast, been doing this since eBay started. And then people like you that they're like, hey, I'm going to try this. What's this all about? And as far as the listeners, there are enough and, plenty of them that haven't even started and they're a little apprehensive. So I like to showcase people like you that, just jumped in with 2 feet and you're doing great. So,
Yeah. I wanted to make some extra side money, and instead of getting a part-time, boring, laborious job, I thought I'd try to resell stuff. Then I can do whatever I find interesting. I can find the items that I find interesting to sell, as long as I can make a profit on them. And this first go around, the first item that I sold on this new account, you're at an estate sale on a Sunday, so everything's half off. we got my wife actually found it. It was a chess set, a low chess set from the 40s. And I believe I paid $15 for it. And that day it sold for like $250, right away. And that's not typical. They're not all like that. But I was like, man, this is really something here. I think if I put my best foot forward, I could really make something happen with this. And, a lot smaller ticket items as well. But that was the first item that really got us going in this go around.
Yeah. And I see people getting hooked on eBay two ways. The first is what you just said. You just jump in and you get this big sale and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
What if this happened every day?
Yeah.
You start doing the math and looking at the dollars. And then there's others that it's just the consistent sales. They see the consistency of it.
Yeah.
And then start playing with the numbers. Well, if I make, $20 sale every day, here's what I could have at the end of the month. And,
right.
That's your reward system for doing the work is when the sales come in. So you're one of those that got hooked by a big sale.
Yeah. The hard part is to stick through the lulls, stick through the ebbs and flows, because it comes and goes. And especially there is an algorithm to eBay. They want you to fall into their algorithm, and then they push your stuff up higher to the search. But you got to persevere when you don't have a few sales. If you don't go a few days without a sale, I've gone even, recently, I go a couple days without having a sale, and I'll have a day where I'll have 5 sales. So you kind of got to just push through that and, get through the little nickel and dime stuff. And then you get to the big ones eventually, because you become more knowledgeable in all those areas. With each sale, even if they're not highly productive, you've still learned something. Okay, well, this item is not going to, a high dollar, so working through that is important. Persevering through that. I think a lot of people get discouraged if they go a week without a sale. I mean, it is what it is. You got to relist, change photos. You got to do what people like you suggest to do. A lot of your suggestions have worked.
Great.
You just got to push through the valleys to get to the peaks.
Yeah, you just have to know that this is temporary. The lull is temporary. And even me, after all these years, sometimes I'll go 2 days without a sale. I'm like, oh, is eBay over? Is it not going to work anymore? Am I never going to sell anything again? And then I have to stop myself and say, okay, I'm going to try to guess what the next item is it's going to sell.
Sure.
What's it going to be? Is it going to be clothing? Is it going to be a Christmas ornament? And I try to get into like looking for that. What's the next sale that's going to happen instead of I'm not going to get any more, because it is so easy to fall into that.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard an eBay seller had a trick. She would go to her death pile and touch an item, just touch it, and it would always sell. And last night that happened to us. My wife touched it's a New York City strap hanger. It's a handle from an old subway car. And I got it in an online estate sale, and my wife touched it yesterday. She goes, "What's this?" And I explained it to her, and 20 minutes later, it sells. I'm sitting on it for a while, and it's, I don't know if it's good juju or what, but it sounds like it worked that time.
I think that's happened to me before. Well, I'll be in my eBay inventory room pulling things to ship, and I'll see something. I'm like, oh, when is that ever going to sell? Or I'll move it around, and then it sells that day or the next day. And I don't know if it's like the power of intention.
Or, something.
Just putting that out to the universe of like, okay, I'm ready for this to go to its new home.
Yes.
But that has happened to me a few times. And then you're like, I'm going back there. I'm just going to touch everything.
Rearrange the whole shop.
So, I wanted to ask you, so eBay is part-time for you.
Yes.
And so do you have a regular job on the?
Yes. I work in the sign industry. I've been a sign fabricator for about 10 years or so. The last 2 or 3 years, I strictly paint, the same way that you'd paint a car with a spray gun. Paint big, large signs that go all over town, all over the country. And that's what I do as my 9.
So, for example, it's not billboards.
It could be billboards. It could be, it's really anything. If you see like illuminated letters that are outside of everywhere, we do all that. Those are called channel letters, monument signs. If big giant sign that's stuck in the ground that says Oakland Mall or whatever, things like that. Just various types. It could be plastic, aluminum, metal, wood. Really the whole spectrum.
Okay. So when you are working, are you at one location all day and
Yeah,
just moving
currently,
around
yeah,
to different locations?
yep. I've had jobs where I've done installations where I'm out on the road all day, but the last couple of years or so, I've been in a shop in the paint booth all day, every day, listening to
Okay.
your podcasts.
um, some people that have jobs where they're moving around all day, they work in the thrift stores I'm
Yeah,
going to be over on that road. I'm going to drop by there after I'm done with my work.
yeah.
So, that's smart to do. But where do you get your items to sell?
Sure. So the hard part is physically getting to the thrift stores, garage sales, estate sales. I've recently learned to work with the online auctions. I heard that you're not a huge fan of those. You kind of got to be diligent when they're coming down to the wire. And like you said, you might lose out on some of those items, but I can't physically be at the places that I need to be. So I've had to rely on these, and they've been pretty well. Not all of them are great, but and then that gives you the opportunity to purchase things from around the country, not just locally to you. You're going to pay a little bit extra in shipping and whatnot, but if it makes it worth it, it works out. But I would love to just do garage sales, but here in Michigan, it's winter for 6 months and nobody has garage sales. And then the thrift stores have kind of upped their prices. They kind of know what they got. They cherry pick the good items. So that's been more and more difficult. The estate sales have worked out when I can physically make it to them, because then you can haggle a little bit. You can do some research on items that you see in the photos. Especially some of the websites, if you're using the estate sale websites, they have some photos. You can do some research before you go there. But so yeah, several ways of sorting: state sales, garage sales, online auctions, and every once in a blue moon marketplace. But I haven't had I've had luck in the past. Years ago I was a big Craigslist and marketplace guy, but lately I don't get any sales on marketplace. I can't find any good items on marketplace that are reasonably priced. So I very seldom search there for items. Once in a blue moon I do.
Okay. Okay. And we are recording this on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I asked if you were sacrificing your inventory treasure hunting today. And you said that you went to some estate sales on Black Friday.
Yes.
And,
Yes. Yesterday
yeah.
I went out to a town called Fenton, which is right near me, and I got some cool stuff there. I got an old war book, an old Ohio war book, and some other items. I got a different estate sale. I got one of those standing globes with the semi-precious stones in it. That's going to be a big pain to chip, but I'll figure it out. And a couple other small items that I got as well.
Okay, so let's go back to things you've sold, because I thought you were a lot older, because the kinds of things you sell are more historical and not
Yeah, yeah.
really just vintage, but they're like historical. So what else you got on your list?
Yeah, so recently the interesting sales was the New York City subway hanger that I was telling you about. I got a Civil War cartridge box plate. I got that in an online auction that recently sold. I had also some Civil War documents, and then the war medals was pretty big. It was a local estate sale, and it was a shadow box full of war medals, and I couldn't very hardly read them, but I got them for $27, I think, the whole lot. And one of them had that Butte Miners Union ribbon in it, which I couldn't believe. Once I searched the comps on it, there was a comp on there for like $700. I said, well, I'm gonna list mine for 5. And 10, 15 minutes later, it sells for full asking price to a man in Alaska, and I couldn't believe it. I've had a couple of 48 star flags recently, some Coors Light signs. And then one of these estate sales had some very strange items. One of which was an armless actress photo. It's armless Frances O'Connor, and she was in a movie called Freaks in the 1920s. And she was a sideshow performer, and she would do various things with her feet, as smoke cigarettes and drink martinis and stuff. So I found an autographed photo of her, which I found to be interesting because she autographed it with her feet, obviously. And so I purchased that. And then also that same estate sale, a man had gone to school with Jack Kevorkian, who's Dr. Death.
I
And
saw that.
they had him in a yearbook. And then there were also some childhood photos that they couldn't verify that I was interested in, but I let those go. But the yearbook was really special. And then ironically, about a week later in an online auction, I almost won a University of Michigan yearbook that would have had him in it as well. but I lost out on it. But so that was one of the some of the more interesting items that I've sold
So
recently.
how much did those things sell for?
So the Jack of Working yearbook, I didn't make a huge profit on it. I paid $50 for it, and I sold it for $100. The armless woman photo, I really didn't make a lot of money on, but it was just so cool. I had to have it. I paid $80 for it, and I sold it for $100. So not a huge profit, but it was very interesting to me. So if I could make a couple bucks off it, and then I like to appreciate these items. The Civil War stuff is a newly found hobby of mine, and I just like to have the relics and hang on to them, show them to my child, show them to my wife, and then sell them. Let them go to their final resting place of the collector. But I get to enjoy them for time being, and I find that to be very interesting.
We'll be back after a quick break.
How do you land your dream job? The latest episode of Career Journey podcast, No Wrong Choices, explores how comic book writer Ethan Sachs, known for his work on Star Wars and other series, broke into the business.
Is it always going to be comic books? Ultimately, was that your fascination?
No.
Always.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I always
that.
loved comic books. It just seemed like, the kind of job like Keebler elf or astronaut where nobody actually has that job. Like if you wanted to be one, how do you even begin?
Hear how Ethan pulled it off by becoming a writer for Marvel, DC, and others on No Wrong Choices, which is available everywhere podcasts are found, YouTube, and at NoWrongChoices.com.
And that is Civil War stuff up there in Michigan.
It's hard. That's why I got to get it all online because there's not a lot of it up. All of it comes from Virginia.
You don't think about that as active Civil War area. It's
right.
More stuff around the Mason-Dixon line.
Yep.
I'm always looking for that down here in the South. And kind of like we talked a little bit before we started recording, it's, you get to these estate sales and they just want too much,
Like I told you, the second one I went to yesterday, it was crazy.
Cool item, but I'm not paying that for it.
Yeah.
And, then you have to try to go back on another day when it's, the prices are discounted and it might not be there. So,
right.
But I think what you're doing with at least buying these items and selling them, not at a great profit, but that's how you're learning.
Right. And that's what's tough, especially with Civil War items. A lot of them are counterfeit or faked. And luckily I haven't been burned too bad on that yet, but it's nice to have held some real relics that I can use to compare to in the future, and that's a part of it, is just learning what's what and what are things supposed to look like. And that's with anything really, especially with historic items such.
Can you elaborate on the fake Civil War items? Like what kind of things are they faking and how are they doing it?
Yeah, so they'll take like
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, it was a big thing, especially in like the mid 1900s. They would take like belt buckles. Maybe they would take an original belt buckle and cast it, and then leave it in the dirt or Clorox bleach. They have ways to fake patina them, and then they would resell them. So I have several Civil War groups on Facebook have been very helpful. Before I buy something, I'll share it to them and say, "Hey, what do you guys think?" And they'll usually give me some pretty good information on that. But even swords and daggers and things like that, they could be counterfeited as well, or maybe not period. Also, there will be a model 1860 sword. So you think it was used during 1860 and on, but no, really, it was issued in 1870 or 1880. So it doesn't make it technically Civil War era, which is still interesting, but it makes it not that. So becoming more knowledgeable in what equipment was issued when is going to be helpful. The more I learn that, the better it's going to be. And those are mostly the things that are faked. It's like old war relics and things of that sort.
Yeah, we had Lynn. She's up in New England, and she does the metal detecting.
Yeah.
Do you hear that podcast?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay.
I'm real into metal detecting. I haven't gone and done it, but
I can send you the link to that. But
sure.
That's something that people may not think about is all this stuff can be right under the surface of the dirt.
Yeah.
And you go around these battlefields and places where there were medical camps or whatever.
Right.
And they're finding this stuff, under the ground, coins, medals, just
Buttons,
medical stuff, buttons. Yeah. And it's
yeah.
like, there's plenty of it still out there. And, then people would bury their valuables so that whichever side, could find them,
Right, right.
Yeah, like in Gone with the Wind and stuff where they're burying silver.
Right.
Well, the book, not in the movie, but, yeah, and then either those people died and they never dug it up, or they forgot where it was, or whatever the situation. And it's just, who knows what is still out there yet to be discovered.
Right.
That's pretty cool. Okay. What else do you have on your list?
Yeah. So other, more run of the mill items, I suppose. I was at a Goodwill. I was actually on the way home from picking up items from an estates or an online auction where I bought two like shop furnaces. The bidding was ending and nobody had bid on them, so I won these two natural gas shop furnaces for $5. So I was on my way back from picking those up. I had no room in the car, and I passed by a Goodwill that I know has some good stuff sometimes. So I stopped in there, and they had a wheelchair, and it was not a standard wheelchair. It was like one that you'd play basketball in, for an athlete. Very fancy. I could tell that it was real fancy. And I did the comps on it, and they were brand new, $2,500, and they wanted $30 for it. So I said, whatever I got to do to fit it in the car, I'm doing. I paid $30 for it, and it took a minute to sell, maybe a month or two to sell, but I did end up selling it for $500 on eBay. And I was able to get a Gaylord box from work. I kind of cut it down into a couple of clamshells and sandwiched them together, and it was packaged very nicely and shipped it to Florida with no issue.
And did you ship it UPS?
It was UPS. That was the cheapest. Yep.
Okay.
Any larger items, UPS seem to always be the cheapest. I don't know that it's always going to be that way, but any big thing I ever have to send is UPS is typically the cheapest.
Do you remember how much it cost to ship it?
I believe it was under $100.
Okay.
Under $100. Yeah, I want to say it was like $80. It was like $80 to ship it, but that's shipping through eBay, and they give you a bit of a discount. So if it was just a regular shipment, it probably would have cost more than that.
And you did the customer paid shipping, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and typically I do have the customers pay shipping, but if it's a large ticket item that I didn't pay a whole lot for, I will try to configure that into the price, and I believe that is what I did there. So I think I did eat the $80 in cost on that. But like I said, I paid $30 for it. So to me, the $300 that I profited was huge,
Yeah.
But typically I do charge shipping. Larger ticket stuff, I'm like, well, I'll just build that into the price there and try to be competitive in that aspect. And sometimes that works.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, one other surprising item was another online auction. They had a couple of these things listed. It was just it said pump for a chemical sprayer, and there was no markings on it. There was nothing to denote what it was. The same thing, I paid $5 for two of them. And I took them home, and I shared a photo of it to one of the Michigan agricultural pages. And somebody instantly told me what it was. And what it was is it's a degreaser can pressure filler, like a body shop or an automotive shop or something like that. So I listed them. First one sold for $100 same day. So somebody must have had that saved as a search. They bought it right away for $100. So then the next one I listed for $140, and it took a little bit longer to sell, about a month. And that one sold for $140 also. So from somebody not even knowing what it was, me taking a chance on it, and it really worked out now, that aspect.
I mean, you're just rolling right along with this.
Yeah, there's all regular stuff too. And what my biggest issue is finding like consistency. Like if I could just get video games like cheaply at the same place, that would be ideal, because it's unreal how fast video games of any kind, any system, any age, as soon as you list it, you'll immediately start to get views. When some of my items will take a day to start getting a couple of views. So it's just astonishing how quickly video games sell, but people know what they're worth, and then everyone else is after them. That's another thing that I try to do. I see what everyone else is after. They're all after the rock and roll t-shirts, the vintage t-shirts. I mean, they fight over them in the stores. You guys can have that. I'm going to go find the weird, obscure stuff that I think I can make money on. And typically that works, like stuff that people will never even think of. There was like a horse saddle. One of these online auctions had a horse saddle. And even my wife was like, why are you buying a freaking horse saddle? And I was like, just, you got to trust the process. You got to trust the process. And I paid $20 for it, and I sold it for $125 on eBay. So
Excellent.
Just random things like that. It'll catch my eye, and I say to myself, that might be valuable. And then I do the research. The internet. That's the one good thing about it is that the Google Lens and even the eBay searches for the photos. It really it's a wonderful tool to be able to figure out what you have quickly and if it's profitable.
Let's go back to the video games because that's a category that I am overwhelmed by.
Yeah.
I do see them in Goodwill, and they're with the the DVDs, and they're in one of those racks where it's like just a whole bunch of white cases. I guess those are Wii games or whatever.
Yeah.
So do you know that category very well? Do you know
I used to be more in touch with the video game stuff. I haven't had a system in many years, so that I am a bit out of touch with that. But what I have found is that like almost every system, even all the way down to like PlayStation 2, which was like very early on, it all sells. If you get a console, the other thing is making sure it works. Buy a console, you got to be able to test it because they don't always work. And the games, if you can get them cheap enough, like yesterday I bought 10 random PlayStation 2 games for 50 cents a piece. You almost can't go wrong because then somebody's got a PS2 out there, and even if they pay $3 a piece for them, you're still, making a good profit on it. So I would say that even if you're not knowledgeable, if you can get the stuff cheap enough, take a chance on it. That's what I would say. And it doesn't take up much space, especially video games. DVDs I kind of stay away from because there's particular ones that are worth money. VHSs I really stay away from because a couple that I've bought, they're just done nothing. Video games, as obscure and old as they might seem, if you can get them for 50 cents or $1, I would always buy them.
Okay. Yeah. And the VHS now they've got all that encapsulating where it's for the listeners, like it's inside a hard plastic case where it's really only being purchased for look at it. You're not actually going to play it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
some of those, that's a whole thing now. And those are being graded, and it's like baseball cards,
Yes.
Or coins where it's a very specialized knowledge.
Yep.
And, I do find myself looking at, here's all these VHS tapes, and, they'll look like they're shrink wrapped, but then you look at the bottom and it just falls right out. Like they've left the shrink wrap on there, but the bottom has been opened.
Right.
And so, if I ever find one that is still in the shrink wrap, like never opened, I might look that up. But
yeah, definitely.
I think based on my personal research, because I was trying to figure that out, I'm like, I see these all the time, so I want to figure out which ones to buy, and it's the horror movies.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know anything about that?
I don't think I have purchased any horror movies. I recently got some old WWE, some old wrestling videos that would have been from my time. They haven't sold yet. I don't think I've sold a single VHS that I have listed. Maybe a couple of them that I've listed, but none of them have sold. That's for sure. So I kind of just stay away from that stuff. I got burned on the Black Diamond Disney stuff. I got a box of those. I got a box of those somewhere, and I just realized that's not worth anything. So it kind of burned me, and I kind of stay away from that stuff. One interesting thing that you can kind of find at thrift stores is like rap or hip hop CDs, like 90s and 2000s. If you can get those for 50 cents or $1 a piece, they sell like crazy. I don't know why, but they still sell pretty well.
Okay, let me just speak to the Disney Black Diamond for people that don't know this. And it's along the lines of the Beanie Babies too. You'll go online and you'll look it up, and you'll look on eBay like, oh, this, Cinderella sold for $10,000. Oh my gosh, I'm going to look for this, and I've got one of those, and I'm going to sell it. And so what it is, there's two things going on. It could be your basic money laundering.
That's what I think.
Putting something up for sale, and then your buddy buys it like this is all a scam. That's all these people working together in a ring behind the scenes, and they're money laundering. They're taking their dirty money from drugs or whatever and buying something like that on eBay just to make it clean money so it comes back to them in their account. The other thing is that people who actually do sell these have, yet again, another ring of people who bid on them bid up the prices
Yep.
and then never pay for it.
I see.
And just to run the prices up so that they can fool the market, like, and sell theirs for a higher price. So it's
Yep.
not really money laundering, but it is still like I would consider that criminal,
You're
because
kind of gaming the system there for sure.
yeah, they're gaming the system to
Yep.
raise the prices on the sold so that theirs will look more valuable. So that goes on with other products too, but the two biggest, especially for new people that see that, this Beanie Baby sold for $1,000.
I got a
or
box
the
of Beanie
Disney-
Babies too.
And I don't know why it's those two items. I guess because they're very common. People have them. But that's been going on for 10 or 15 years.
Yep.
And so just for the listeners, when you see something like that and you can't figure out why it's selling for so much. Now, a lot of vintage items do sell for a lot, but you want to look at your completed listings, maybe going back 2 years on Terapeak, and you want to look for a lot of different sellers. You want to look for consistency over time. You want to look at the pattern of things.
Yes.
So sometimes you really do find something that can be worth thousands like that, but it's not going to be the Beanie Babies and the Disney Black Diamond. That's not real. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's real.
Yes. Yeah. Luckily, I only got burned on a few Beanie Babies, but yesterday, I don't know why, but of my compulsions, I guess I found a Princess Diana Beanie Baby, and I know that's supposed to be the most rare, the most expensive.
Yeah,
and it was $2.
Really do sell for a lot, right?
It was $2 in the case. It was really good shape, so I was like, whatever, it's coming with me. And I started to go list it. There's one on there for like $8,000, and I'm like, I don't think I'll ever get anything for it. But it sucked me in yesterday. Luckily, I didn't spend too much on it.
Okay. Yeah. Good. So newbie lesson learned, right?
Yes. No VHS, no Disney VHSs, and no Beanie Babies.
Yeah. And it's usually something very common that you just can't figure out. Like, why would that sell for so much?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So video games, are there certain, is that Zelda one still really coveted?
I believe so. I think any of those big names, Zelda, Mario, things like that, and it doesn't have to be just video games. It could be like video game related memorabilia. Like I sold a Zelda backpack that wasn't anything that I thought was special, but it was cheap, and it sold for like $40. I got that from the thrift store. But really anything with like a major name attached to it, especially like Zelda or Mario or the old school, like things of that nature, I guess.
Mhm.
But like I said, I'm not an expert in that. I've just seen that when I do purchase those things, that they sell so quickly. I had a PS3, I think a gaming system and a whole bunch of games. That stuff sells in a half hour. As soon as you list it, it sells. But it's hard to find that stuff at a reasonable price where you can make a profit, because everybody knows how quickly it sells, and everybody knows that it's in demand.
Do you think people are actually playing these games, or is it?
I do. I didn't think so, because when I was a kid, once a system became obsolete, it was you would never purchase games for the older system. But I think nowadays people they enjoy playing the PlayStation 1 that they had when they were a kid, and they go, I think I'm gonna grab some PS1 games and sit around this weekend and play the console that I remember playing as a kid. That has become more prevalent, I think. And then maybe just economically, maybe some people can't afford the newest system, and they're playing with the PS2 or a PS3, but then they still want as many games as they can get. They can afford to buy the games. And I think that helps, the market as well. Then you get into like the older stuff, Sega Genesis and the original Nintendos and stuff. Those are really millennials who are trying to like obtain their nostalgia. They're trying to relive their childhood. Like you said, buying back your childhood, I believe. And I think that's what's going on there.
Okay. Can I ask you what year you were born?
1987.
Okay. So you're a little bit ahead of my kids. Yeah. But you weren't. You weren't in the age of Atari.
No, not quite. But I also wasn't in the age of like the internet either. I almost don't like being called a millennial, because we didn't have the internet until like I was in high school. So like I lived my childhood internet free.
Okay.
But yeah, so about that time.
Okay, yeah, because I was born in '66, and so in the or mid 70s, maybe, the Atari came out, and it
Okay.
was like Pong and all these extremely, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Rudimentary
Yeah, sure,
gaming stuff. It's like black and white.
Yeah.
There's like this one sound.
Yeah.
People who know this will be laughing right now. They're like, yeah, we had that. We thought we were so cool with our Atari that
Yeah.
didn't really do anything by
Yeah.
today's standards. And then they started coming out with more like color and different games. And there was one game I played, I think it was called Stampede, and you had you're roping cattle, and it just kept getting harder and harder. And then there was one with this, I think it was like circus, or it was a clown that was bouncing on a teeter-totter thing, and you bounce him up really high and try to poke out the colors at the top. I would just be sucked into that for hours, and then of course Asteroids and Pac-Man and all that stuff. But just thinking back to how technology has changed. And then my kids were into it was PlayStation, and then, the Wii, and then the stuff online. And, I remember my kids in middle school, they knew like cars. They knew like the logos of Toyota and Infinity, and like we'd be driving down the road, and that's a BMW, and that's this, and logos that didn't have any letters in it. I'm like, how do y'all know this? And they're like, oh, Grand Theft Auto.
Yes.
And then now as adults, they're telling me, Mom, you never should have let us play that game. It was not for kids. There's profanity and all this stuff. And I'm like, I just was glad y'all were happy and entertaining yourselves.
Yeah.
And they would laugh, and they were having a big time, but I didn't supervise that one very well, but they did learn all these car logos.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a big Grand Theft Auto fan as well, but not much of a gamer anymore.
Yeah, and then my son got into RuneScape.
Okay.
It's like a medieval thing.
Oh, okay.
And I know I've told this before, but I'm going to tell it again because it just blew my mind. Like, he was playing that, and then one day he's like, Mom, can I have some money sent to your PayPal account, and then you can give it to me? And I'm like, what are you doing up there? What, I had no idea what he was involved in. I was like, what's he doing? And he was making these RuneScape accounts and building up, the treasures and all the stuff, so the account would be established. And then he was selling them to adults. He was like 10 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And he wanted to sell the established account to these, adults, so they could just jump right in and start playing.
I see.
I thought that was genius. I'm like, here's this kid who is good at this game, and he's figured out a way to monetize it.
Yeah.
Watching me buy things and resell them. And so he figured that out. And I mean, he made all kinds of money, and we just put it in his account. And
that's
then
awesome.
When he was old enough to drive and stuff, he had some money. But I was like, I guess I didn't supervise them very well.
They turned out just fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, he turned out fine, but it was like, wow, what an entrepreneurial idea for a 10-year-old. It's like way better than a lemonade stand, you know?
Yeah.
So that's cool. Okay, so back to you. You've got your video games, you've dabbled in the VHS. What other kinds of things do you look for?
Yeah, so one item that consistently sells every time, and I'm not sure why, is chess sets of varying sizes, qualities, prices. Everyone seems to love chess. I don't even know how to play chess, but everyone seems to love it. So every time I'm at a garage sale and I see a chess set, I always buy it, and they always sell. I'm currently sitting on a chess set that is got at an online auction for about $25, I believe. And it's an Italian-made alabaster stone chess set from Hudson. Still has a sticker on it and everything. So it's probably from the 40s or 50s, maybe a little bit later. And that's worth a lot of money. So I'm asking, I think, $250 for it, or $300. But I'm confident that it will sell once I find the right buyer. But I've sold little, $10 chess sets as well. They're just, for some reason, they're just like the video games. They're just very consistent sellers.
And you're finding these all over?
Yeah, like the last I went to a garage sale, and I picked up 5 different chess sets. They were like kind of wooden that opened up with like maybe a mirror top on them and stuff, and they were really cheap, like $2 a piece. I bought all 5 of them. All 5 of those have since sold, and then the last 2 that I got were just in an online auction. So like if I find a couple items in this auction and then I win the items, you got to kind of make it worth my while. So then I'll just start to see, I'll follow it live, and okay, this item's coming up next. Do some research, and then I might buy some stuff that I wasn't necessarily aiming to buy, but I'm trying to make it worth my trip to go pick the stuff up, or if it's being shipped. So those couple of chess sets I got. It was another Civil War chess set as well. It's got a Life magazine or Time magazine, Civil War guy pieces and stuff like that. I'm sitting on those 2 chess sets currently, but those are going to be higher ticket as well. So yeah, it was just something that, and like I said, the very first one that my wife found at that estate sale, like I almost had her put it back. I was like, man, nobody's buying chess sets. But we took it home and took pictures of it, and apparently it was butterscotch and Bakelite red, and that's what made it valuable. The Bakelite.
Yeah, that
Yep.
butterscotch. It really does look like butterscotch.
Yeah, and that's what I believe is what made it so valuable, because I have other low chess sets of the same years and stuff, and they weren't nearly as valuable. So, but yeah, it's very consistent though. Every time I get a chess set, video games, they sell all the time.
Do you ever look at the Money Making Mondays threads on the Facebook group and
Yes.
see? Okay, so
Yep.
did you see the backgammon game that KC sold?
No, I didn't see that.
Maybe that was before you came along, but I think it was just the pieces,
Wow.
the little discs that were Bakelite, butterscotch, and
Yeah.
several $100s just for the pieces.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. For some reason, I'm not sure what makes that stuff so valuable, but
What makes it
sought after.
valuable is it was only made for a short time.
Okay.
It's actually pronounced Bakelite,
Okay.
and it was this material that they made like telephones out of it. They made jewelry, and I think it has formaldehyde in it. It's like toxic, so they quit making it. But
Okay.
There's all these different tests you can do for it. Like you rub it really hard and get it hot, and you can smell the formaldehyde. You can run it under hot water. There's certain things. I think 409 is the cleaner. You put it on a Q-tip and just rub it on there, and it turns to a different color. And you can Google that, like, to test. Obviously, you can't do this at an estate sale,
Right.
except for the rubbing it and smelling it. But it smells like, when you're in science class in high school and you're dissecting something, that formaldehyde smell.
Yeah.
But it's just very collectible because it was only made for a few years, and it's representative of that time in history. I think it is around the 40s. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, that's what makes it valuable is they just made for a short time, like a lot of other plastics and resins and stuff like that. It's has historical value.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I learned something. I didn't know why or what. That's it's very interesting to know. I'll want to keep that in mind. Another thing you taught me is ephemera. I didn't know what to call these historical paper products that I was picking up, but now I've got a name for them, and it makes me sound fancy when I say it. So that's nice. I'll get old postcards or old, just scrapbooks. I found a very obscure old scrapbook of the Dion Quints. I'm sure nobody even knows. I didn't even know.
Oh, I know. I saw that movie.
And I didn't know. I still don't know nothing about them. But I paid.
Story.
It was at a big, I don't know, like an outdoor sale, like a flea market type of deal. And it was like $1. And the guy I was with is like, "What the heck are you buying that for?" And I said, "There's some old lady out there somewhere who remembers these people, and they're gonna want this." And it was a massive scrapbook, like newspaper clippings and postcards, and it was like maybe somebody who was related to them or something. But it just sold the other day. I went put it up for auction because I wasn't sure what it would be worth. And somebody paid $10 for it, so I 10x my money.
That
and that's
is a
all that
fascinating story. They were in Canada, and this lady she had 5 babies.
Yep.
And they didn't think they would live, and they put them in the oven overnight, like,
oh my God,
really low, like to keep them warm, because she didn't know what to do. And then they became pretty much a sideshow. The doctor turned them into a sideshow where they were at carnivals and fairs, and because it was before, I think it was in the 40s, maybe.
Probably before child labor laws
it
and
was
such.
before all this for in vitro, and it was this was a natural quintuplets. It just
Oh
happened.
wow.
And they were a poor farming family in Canada. And then they were pretty much exploited for their
Right.
being quints, because
Yeah.
that's people don't see very often back then. So
Right.
yeah, that's a cool story. And so this was a scrapbook about them.
It was a huge scrapbook, newspaper clippings and postcards, and it was a lot of stuff about that doctor. And that's any information I do have is from a little bit of the readings that I did in the scrapbook. But like I said, the guy I was with was like, "Man, you're weird for buying that stuff, man." But
Well,
I knew somebody would want it. I didn't know if it'd be very profitable, but I knew somebody out there was going to be interested in it.
it's the unusual. Like you're
Yes.
probably never going to see that again.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. What other ephemera you got?
So currently I have a bunch of old postcards. I've instead of doing them in a lot, I was trying to do them individually, and those haven't really moved. They're so interesting because a lot of them are handwritten, and you can kind of like decipher what they're saying. And back in like the 50s or 40s, it's just so cool to see them telling their messages or sending messages to people across the country, and they try to fit so much information on that card because that was the whole message they would get. And things of that nature. And then also like Civil War documents, Civil War letters, or poetry or drawings. Those can be valuable, but they're also hard to find at a reasonable price. Um, Old newspapers. I've got a couple old newspapers from World War II. Old war photos. I've got like some negatives from Pearl Harbor, like official U.S. Navy negatives, which I think is cool. I don't think it qualifies as ephemera, but it's on my list.
I mean, it's in that
goods.
category. Yeah.
And then I just love the way that that stuff is can be valuable to the right buyer. It's kind of objective almost as far as value goes, depending on the piece, and then it's super easy to ship. Sometimes I'm willing to take on the task of shipping a large item, but it's much easier to slide a piece of paper into an envelope and send it on its way. So that's one nice thing. It doesn't take up a lot of space either.
How many items do you have listed right now?
Currently, I have like 130. I'm aiming to be at 200 by the end of the year, but it seems like every time I try to do consistent. I'm trying to be consistent, like 3-4 items a day, but that doesn't always happen, But I'm trying to get to 200 items, and that for me right now currently is manageable. I don't want to have 1,000, 2,000 items that I have no idea where they're at, or I need like some sophisticated system to keep track of. So if I can keep it at 150, 200 items, but those items are more valuable, that's the business model that I'd like to stick with.
Yeah, it'll take some time to get there because you're figuring things out. But
yes.
The recurring theme of this podcast is, those of us that are trying to get to that higher profit level, and then you see stuff and it's like, oh, I've sold that before. I know that'll sell. And it's just $1 and I can sell it for 20, and it's just easy, and it's easy to ship. And that's me with hats, baseball hats.
Sure.
And like beanie hats, the knit hats.
Right.
I sell those all the time for $20 and up, and they're small and easy and lightweight, and I'm looking for that Monster Energy hat that's going to sell for $100, but gloves, and I am more meticulous about choosing, but sometimes you just know, and it's like, I'd really like stuff that sells for 50 or more, but this is so easy, I'm not going to leave it behind.
Right. Yeah, clothing is not something I do a whole lot of because I have a closet full of clothing over here. Some Harley shirts, some Hawaiian shirts, a ModCloth coat. It's just so difficult to photograph. I feel that would need to buy a mannequin to properly photograph it, because as you lay it on the floor, you can catch all of its details, but it just doesn't look as nice as if you were to have a mannequin. And so I find the clothing just to be kind of a pain to picture and list, and I'm not so knowledgeable in it, so that's not something that I always go for unless it's like like an original single stitch t-shirt. I recently sold a Corvette t-shirt from like 80s, I believe, and it was a single stitch, and it was like a new old stock, never had been worn. That I picked up, and that did sell. But
okay, can you explain that to the listeners, the single stitch?
Yeah, so like allegedly the single stitches are kind of denote their how vintage they are. There was it's not like they abruptly stopped. The single stitch is referring to the stitch in the sleeve. The shirts of today, they have 2 stitches. Apparently back in the day they would have 1 stitch, and over the course of probably a decade they kind of phased out the single stitch to a double stitch. It's not just like one day they decided, so you can age the clothing by that. It's just kind of a guesstimate. And then it's also just kind of a fad keyword. You know, if you can find a shirt that's got a single stitch, it doesn't really matter. But to the collectors, they want to see that. They're searching that. They're searching single stitch to find their vintage clothing, and that's just all the rage nowadays. It just refers to the stitching on this.
Right. So for the listeners, it's like the double stitch is like railroad tracks. It's just you could just look at it and see there's just 2 stitches running parallel, and that's that gives the garment more durability, so it doesn't tear or rip or come apart over time. So that's what you don't want.
Yep.
You want the single, and I mean that's going to be tedious looking through all the t-shirts and looking for that. But, you know, you're looking for that needle in a haystack. And that's what we are driven to do as hunter-gatherer resellers is look for those items. So maybe we get a t-shirt expert on here at some point. So if there's one out there listening, let me know and we'll get you on to talk about it, because that's another category I'd like to learn more about. I see so many t-shirts, but it's like, it just seems overwhelming. I want to go through things fast, like sweaters. I like because I can look for the cashmere. I can look for the the thick cotton polo sportsman ones, and like you can look by texture, or I look for sequins or things like that are, you don't have to touch every single one of them. You can just look for that texture.
Right.
But t-shirts, I'm sorry, they all look the same.
And then it's hard to find. You got to fight all the other people, because I think a lot of the younger generation that's getting into eBay, that's basically all they know or all they care about. Oh, you're going to be hard pressed to find anything valuable at the thrift store. It's already gone. You know, they sit there and hawk that stuff out. So like I said before, I let them have that stuff. But if I come across it online and I can get it cheaply, I'll do that. But
or unless it's like a garage sale or an estate sale where they just can't look through everything at estate sales and mark every single thing up. So you might see, Gen Xers die every day. And you might see stuff like this where, somebody's kept all their concert t-shirts and there it is right there. And the estate sales I go to, all the clothing is usually one price. Like, everything's $3, coats are $5 or something like that. And I'll tell you a little secret. Over the summer, I did work part-time for an estate sale company.
Okay.
I thought that'd be a great side gig, out and see all this stuff, learn more. It was really like, how can I learn more? And I did it for about a month. And it was too much heavy lifting for me. I wanted them to use me for my brain, not for my brawn. So, but the clothing was overwhelming. It was just, this one place. And I'm like telling them, oh, this would sell for so much more. You should price this higher. They did not want to hear that. They're like, no, all the clothing's the same price. We don't have time to do that. Just get it done. Just organize it. And then we got to move into the basement where there's 8,000 Department 56 things that I had to look at price. And anyway, so that's kind of their mentality, because the estate sales, they only have 2 or 3 days to get it out of there.
Yeah.
So, and they know you're going to find stuff that's more valuable, but they're going to mark up the crystal and the silver and the dinner and the artifacts and the giant cross stitch things hanging on the wall, like the obvious stuff.
Yeah.
They don't go into the detail of every single item. And that's why you see people like George Kelly. I found this ring at a garage sale for $1 and sold it for $500, because people just don't have time. They're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in.
Yeah. I'll find myself at estate sales and I don't beeline for the basement, but once I'm done in the main floor, I'll go in the cellar and I'll try to find something that was overlooked by the estate sale company because they can't catch everything. They don't catch everything, and
Right.
sometimes I'll find some good stuff. I like selling functional clothing. Like up here in the north, it's real cold, so Carhartt coveralls, Carhartt jackets, gloves, all things like that that are functional. Those sell, pretty well as well.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I
Yeah.
told you this would go by fast, so
Yeah.
we have made it to the end. Did you
Sure.
want to answer a personal question?
Yeah, so some of the podcasts I like to listen to are yours, of course. I listen to Pro Flipper a lot, eBay for Business, Pure Hustle podcast. I Love to Be Selling is one of my favorite ones, and then I also listen to a lot of Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn as well. I'm a
Okay.
comedy fan as well, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Well, this has been very educational, and you don't sound like you've only been doing this for 6 or 7 months. I mean,
Yeah, like I said, I've been buying on eBay for many years, and I grew up in the thrift store. My mom would buy things out of necessity, not ever to flip things. But I've always been a bit of a hustler when it comes to Craigslist and Marketplace, and now I've really tried to harness the power of eBay, and I'm trying to make myself as knowledgeable as possible. I'd like to do this full time eventually, someday, but I've got to build up this wealth of knowledge so that I don't have to search every single item and things like that.
full
Uh,
time is tough.
sure, that it is.
And a lot of sellers out there that are full time, they may have a spouse that holds a regular job, or
Yeah,
maybe they're into retirement and they're getting their retirement money. Um, because this business is so up and down,
yep,
it's just not predictable. And trust me, I've been there with, am I going to be able to make my bills this month? I need those sales to pay my mortgage or whatever it was.
Right.
And it can be very stressful, very nerve-wracking. So a lot of
Right.
people do have something on, another part-time, something that's steady,
Yeah.
uh, they can do in combination with this, because I don't care how experienced you are and how long you've been doing it or how much inventory you have, there are going to be slow times.
Yep.
And either you just have to be okay with that, or figure out something else to do to complement it, because it can be very stressful.
Yeah, definitely.
So don't beat yourself up if you don't get into full time as fast as you want to.
Yeah, no, current my 9 to 5 is I'm perfectly content there. But like I said, instead of doing a backbreaking second job, it's nice to be able to use my brain and eBay to bring in a little bit of side income there.
So your wife, is she on board with all this?
Yeah, absolutely. She works full time from home. She's worked for a background check company, but she does all my shipping and stuff. I'll typically have to box it up, but she will print my label and arrange the shipping, usually post office. But she's my shipping department, and also she's my realist. I'm a dreamer and she's a realist, so she kind of tries to keep me together.
That's a good combination. She kind of keeps your feet on the ground.
Absolutely, yes. How much did you pay for this? Are you
Right,
sure
and
it's
you're like,
valuable? But
when you
to
get
me,
two
it works out.
dreamers together who have entrepreneurial mindsets,
Yes.
you can just be all over the place. So
Yep.
that's good
Yep.
that she keeps you grounded and keeps you in the real world. So
Yes, I appreciate her for that.
okay, well, thank you so much for coming on, and I can't wait to see what unfolds for you, because you have some really specialized knowledge. So we'll be looking for your sales on the group.
Definitely. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Will, for making time to come on the podcast and sharing all of that fun and unusual information. On to today's trivia question. We mentioned Bakelite. When was it made, and what kinds of things are made from it? Here's a few seconds to think it over. Okay, the first plastic made from synthetic components, Bakelite, was developed by Leo Baekeland, and that's spelled Baekeland, Keland, in Yonkers, New York in 1907 and patented on December 7th, 1909. Many companies stopped using Bakelite in the early 1940s as the need for World War II related products took hold. By the end of the war, new technologies in the world of plastics had made Bakelite obsolete. The height of Bakelite jewelry was in the late 1930s, up until the end of the Art Deco period. Compared to the other plastics that have since replaced it, Bakelite was expensive, fragile, and hard to repair. Items made from Bakelite include jewelry, telephones, radio casings, handles for items such as hairbrushes, mirrors, and combs, handles for flatware, other kitchen items, toys, pipe stems, buttons, and on and on. Bakelite was touted as the material of 1,000 uses. So that is your quick and dirty explanation of Bakelite. There are entire books written on this, so if you want to know more, Google is your friend. Okay, next week my guest is Alicia, who works a full-time job in addition to her part-time eBay business. She has a great eye for picking and has scored some really profitable items. So make sure you come back next week to meet Alicia. And thank you for spending the last hour with us. Make it a great week on eBay. Bye-bye for now.